how did you go about implementing this safe hybrid event for all participants?
Sure. So I'll start and then turn it over to Jennifer. So first of all, we already had a solid baseline of health protocols in place. At the start of the pandemic, Marriott International had already implemented our commitment to clean initiatives throughout our portfolio of 7,500 hotels. But knowing that people weren't necessarily ready to travel yet, we decided to host a series of local hybrid meetings in drive markets. And we called this series Connect with Confidence, which is really an extension of our Marriott Bonvoy Events initiative. So we had two main objectives of these hybrid meetings. First, we wanted to bring people together with confidence, by leveraging the health protocols and giving people really the opportunity to also participate from their home, virtually from their home or office. And then secondly, we really want to provide a fully immersive and engaging experience to encourage the return to in-person meetings. Not surprisingly, 90% of our participants had not been to an in-person meeting since the pandemic began. So we had to both earn people's confidence in our ability to execute a meeting in this environment, and also get them to embrace new behaviors. So we specifically wanted attendees to know that they have control of their spaces and that they also have options based on their comfort level. So in addition to the baseline of health protocols I mentioned, we also introduced 5, which we call our 5 Ws: wear a mask, wash your hands, watch your distance, well-being check, and then walk the flow. And then in addition to that, we then also implemented some other tactics. For example, the entire registration and check-in process was contactless, and we also staggered arrivals. Also upon arrival, we placed thermal scanners. So the individuals had to pass by this iPad-looking device that basically took a temperature screening. We also created sanctuary seats that had hygiene kits, and these were basically like a pod. It really was everyone seated had their own little cocoon, if you will. At our first event, we used companies called Center Circle Creative and Design Foundry to really make each of these seats into like a living room setting, kind of like I said, with the pod. And then our second event, which we had in Denver, which was larger, we actually used our hotel furniture, and we just basically put a slip cover over it to dress it up a bit and had individual tables. And then for lunch, we had attendees we basically provided them with some different seating choices where they had tables of 1, 2, or 3 people where they could choose where to sit. And obviously everyone was social distance, of course. And then finally, food and beverage, we really redefined our F&B packages to really include more prepackaged food, staff food stations, and then also we served lunch in these vertical bento boxes that actually had 3 different levels, and each one had different courses. So it was really kind of cool way to really think differently about how to repackage food and beverage. And finally, we really made the conscious decision to communicate all of this up front so that attendees would feel comfortable to attend. So Jen, over to you, maybe discuss maybe some of the technical stuff.
Thanks, Glenn. We were really delighted to partner with Marriott on this event. And, the safety of the in-person attendees on property was our first priority, just as it was for Marriott. MeetingPlay wasn't just providing the technology behind the scenes. We had a vested interest in making sure the event, even the portions happening at the hotel, went off with success. So we very much entered into this partnership with Marriott with a focus on our own social responsibility as it related to COVID protocols to really ensure that people could meet safely. Then we made sure that the technology we were providing helped set the stage for a safe and comfortable event. So we built the event technology to aid, first off, in a smooth arrival experience for the in-person attendees using the mobile app, and made sure that the virtual attendees had an enjoyable experience interacting with the virtual platform. So as Glenn mentioned, we set out first to over-communicate to attendees. Studies show that the more participants know and the earlier they know it, the more likely they are to attend in person, which was our goal. So we used our pre-event registration site, our mobile app, and our virtual platforms to communicate information early and often, so attendees really felt safe and comfortable well before arriving on site or logging into the platform. One of the things that we integrated into the virtual platform was our seat selector feature. So we had a 3D rendering of the ballroom, and that allowed attendees to select their seat when they registered, so they felt comfortable with where they would be in the room when they got there, whether that was by the door or up front by the stage. We also used our mobile app to divide attendees into zones prior to their arrival, which told them how to enter into different spaces. We sent a push notification to them once they arrived, reminding them of their zone and seat number, and it was also listed on the main page of the mobile app, so it was easy to access. Their zone allowed them to enter various areas, and it allowed them to keep socially distant from others. Lastly, we integrated contactless check-in, as Glenn mentioned, with thermoscanners, and we put their pre-printed badges at their seat for them, and Marriott enhanced with snacks, drinks, and more information about what to expect at the event.
That's great. Seems like you guys really thought of everything. How did you blend the in-person and virtual audiences together to make a true hybrid experience where everybody felt like they were a part of the same thing?
Yeah, so I'll start. And, it was really important for us. We wanted every participant to feel included in hybrid events, but we knew that the experience of the in-person and virtual were going to be different, and that essentially we would be planning and producing two separate events, or at least experiences. Understanding that most of our attendees would be participating online, we also knew that the virtual audience could not really be treated as an afterthought. In the past, previously, hybrid meetings just meant that you filmed whatever was on main stage, and then you basically just had, people watching online. But in this case, we really needed to go out of our way to create alternate programming for those virtual guests. So in addition to planning our core event experiences, we also added special touches to help the virtual participants really feel present and truly part of the event, such as, for example, we did pre-arrival videos that really walked the attendees through the layout, flow, and health protocols that their in-person counterparts were experiencing in person. And then we also had videos of the chefs preparing food that we made sure to play at during the lunch and also the breaks as well. We really also worked with Uber Eats to provide vouchers for lunch delivery so that the people attending at home could get lunch on us that was delivered at the same time that we were all experiencing that in person. So they were able to really, connect that into a virtual experience. And then finally, we realized that it'd be too much for the host who's on stage to really handle the online Q&A, because we really wanted a lot of Q&A and a lot of chat between our online attendees through the MeetingPlay platform. So what we actually did was we added a virtual moderator that was situated near the stage that could serve as an online advocate to really make sure that the ideas and all the online sentiment was really voiced in the room. So it really helped connect the two audiences. Jennifer, do you want to maybe go into a little more detail on your side, the MeetingPlay side?
Sure. It's interesting because the definition of hybrid is different depending on who you ask. And we have some customers who feel that hybrid is an in-person event and a separate virtual platform. But what's missing from that, and what's really critical to the success of a hybrid event, is connecting those two audiences. It's all about not letting your virtual attendees feel like second-class citizens. So we use MeetingPlay's virtual platform and mobile app together to achieve this connection, and mirrored as many features as possible in both platforms, so each group had the same engagement levels during the event. And this is really what bridged the two audiences together. So some of the technology features that we connected here were, in addition to our gamification and social feed features that blended the group, we focused on a few other elements to make them feel more united. First, we utilized our networking algorithm, and based on a handful of questions that we asked attendees when they enter the platform, we matched them based on years in the industry, experience level with hybrid and virtual events, things like that. And this really connected the virtual attendees to some of those folks attending in person and vice versa. We also used our audience response system, which allowed both audiences to answer polls and submit questions simultaneously during each session. So their voices were heard during the panel discussions. As Glenn mentioned, we had a moderator to ensure that those questions from the virtual audience were asked of the in-person panel. We would indicate the person's name and company who submitted it, and it allowed the virtual attendees to feel better connected, and also reminded those in the room that there were others attending and engaging in the event as well. One other fun feature that we included was our virtual photo booth, where we asked virtual attendees to snap a selfie, add a border, and some fun stickers. And we posted it to the screens inside the ballroom, so the in-person audience could see who was participating virtually. Lastly, we had multiple camera views in the room, so the virtual attendees could choose their view on the platform. So they could choose to view the program front and center, or view it from left or right, where they could also see the setup of the entire room, which we had a lot of questions about. So while the in-person attendees could choose their seat, the virtual attendees could choose their view. And in the end, we heard that the areas where we connected attendees equally made a big difference. And the virtual attendees really did feel like they were more in the room.
That's great. Yeah, I was going to ask, what kind of feedback did you get from the attendees?
Yeah, so I'll start that one. In terms of, with the newness of hybrid events, participant feedback is more important than ever. And it's also really important to understand that it's really changing in real time as well. Things are changing so much in this space. It's really hard to keep up. So that's why feedback is really important. But the most important part of feedback that we got, which is instantaneous, is that people were just so glad to get out of the house. They were just so excited to be there and meet face to face. People wanted to hug, but they couldn't. But they tried their best of virtually hugging with each other, if you will. One attendee even said it was the first time she put on heels in 8 months. So that I thought was really interesting. But in terms of feedback that was a little more structured, we did some real-time polling, as Jennifer mentioned, in terms of the tool itself allowed some polling techniques, as well as we obviously did a post-event survey to get feedback. What we found is 95% of the attendees that were there said that they would attend another event if it were designed with the same principles. And then 51% of those attendees also said that they're planning to host a hybrid event within the next 6 to 12 months. So we also, as an evolution of this program, we executed another event, as I mentioned previously, in Denver in January. And we had then implemented some more health protocols and other technology based on feedback from the first event. Specifically, we partnered with other health companies to provide things like rapid COVID testing on site the morning of the event. And then also some really cool technology that we utilized, heat map cameras that could actually tell us it could detect whether people were gathering in any one particular location. And then it also, using those same cameras provided through facial recognition technology, it also gave alerts to the meeting planners to see if anyone was not wearing masks. So it was really kind of cool using these technologies to really kind of like, be the eyes and ears and making sure that all these protocols are featured. It's also important to know that although we are a hotel company, we also are meeting planners. And we, really learned a lot from these events. It was our first hybrid event experience. And therefore, we're taking our customer learnings and really incorporating that into research. We're creating a white paper that we're going to be publishing next week and publishing on the Marriott Bonvoy Events website. And I know MeetingPlay, as our partner, has done the same thing. They've produced their learnings into a document that is available on their website as well. Jennifer, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, on the technology side, a lot of great feedback as well. So overwhelmingly, we heard that allowing people to choose their seat made people feel more comfortable and safe. They could see the ballroom ahead of time, get a sense of the space, and choose a seat that felt right to them. And many said that this was the key driver in them deciding to attend the event in person. So overall, that along with another key success to the event was really utilizing both platforms to connect the in-person and virtual audiences. Attendees ultimately said that engagement between those audiences increased their enjoyment of the event by 92%. So, all across the board, a great event with two great companies, and we're really pleased with the results.
Oh, that's fantastic. It sounds like such a great event. I think we have a couple more minutes, so we're going to take some audience Q&A if you guys are okay with that. We have some great questions here. It's a good one. In hindsight, is there anything you would have done differently or wish you had incorporated?
Yeah, let me take that one. And Jennifer, while you're thinking if there's anything on the technology side, one thing that we did that we made sure that we didn't want a lot of people crossing over each other to get to microphones or anything like that when they asked questions. So what we decided to do is have the people in the audience just speak loudly to the host, and then they would repeat the question back into the microphone. But what uncannily happens is the old saying, this isn't so much of a question, it's a comment or that kind of thing. It's like these questions went on for several minutes. So you had all this dead air. So what we actually wound up doing during the break is we went ahead and installed freestanding microphones in each aisle. And then we had people just come up. We thought that was low risk because having them come up in the aisle and speak into a microphone thought it was pretty low risk in terms of any kind. There's no shared device. You're not touching it. You're basically just leaning over. So that was one thing that we just had to do on the fly, and that's something that really important, that you need to be flexible and expect the unexpected. Jennifer, I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to add.
Yeah, for us, we ultimately in our platform listed every session as, individual agenda items, and ultimately at the last minute decided to list them all as one broadcast so that folks didn't have to go back and forth between different agenda items. And really, since then, we have instituted a sort of automatic advanced feature to allow folks to go from one session to another, replicating that sort of technology. But really making that change at the last minute made a big difference so that people could see all of the videos and all of the sessions all in one place without having to jostle back and forth.
That's great. And we have a couple more minutes. Outside of the conference itself, was there any sort of evening or social event? Was there anything for in-person and virtual, or did you kind of focus on the actual conference?
No, there wasn't anything that was social. We had our event, I think it was 4 or 5 hours. So obviously, once you start involving more social activities, it gets a little more complicated. So we did not for these events. One other learning that we had, just really quickly, is also around meetings and breaks and lunches. You don't need as much time because people aren't really networking. They're not really, you don't want them really interacting. The whole point is to keep people separate and everything. So we found when we did our second one also related to kind of networking sessions and things like that, we could shorten the time frame and just have people go ahead, eat, and then just go back.
Yeah, that makes sense. Is there anything that you feel like you really took away that you want to take back to in-person events when they return? Any big lessons learned?
Jennifer, I can go. Do you want to?
Yeah, I mean, it's just, just pulling from my event experiences and seeing how all of this happened. I think, the zones that we created were great because of COVID and all of the protocols, but really could be utilized as well in an in-person event after COVID, because I think what ended up happening is, we didn't have the crowds around the coffee break, and we didn't have, everybody swarming into the lunchroom at one time. So those kind of tactics, we've done where we've staggered lunches before, but, having that be a way for, if you have limited space in a ballroom for lunch, that clearly can be another way of creating those zones or those segments of people so that, we're continuing to separate groups into smaller groups. And that helps with networking too.
Yeah, and the one thing I'll add to that is in terms of the what I said before about not treating your virtual audience as an afterthought, when we all gather back together again in person, I think it's important, like I said before, you can't just treat these people as someone who's like looking online and watching the same main stage thing. You really need to invest in counter programming. Quite honestly, virtual events were already happening before the pandemic. As you go to industry trade shows or things like that, you always had the people, especially internationally, who didn't want to make that investment in flying in and being, as well as time. So, I think that that's going to continue to be there even after meetings come back in person. So just, it's a good learning to make sure that we're treating everyone as really still equal, separate but equal, if you will, in terms of, their experience.